It's your boy Hendo checking in. They'll come to y'all with another video. Today we got why black people hate immigrants. Why FBA'S, black Americans hate immigrants. We got one guy, his name will be right up here. He broke it down perfectly. Raphael Words, I think that's his name on TikTok. Check him out. He's a good creator. But you know I'm not gonna waste your time. Like, comment, subscribe, hype this video up, and we out.
Okay, all right. So technically, the first immigrants were the British, but that was obvious what they did. They were enslavers. They set up the whole system. That's obvious. But the next great group that came that was using the weapon against us were the Irish. Now remember, with all these immigrant groups, every single one has a hazing period. And once that hazing period is over, then they have an established role in order to help subjugate foundational Black Americans. So the first up after the British were the Irish. And what did the Irish do? Now, when they came here first, they said they were kind of cool with us because they went through their hazing period. Whenever in the hazing period, they always wanted to relate to Black folks. But then once it's over, what happened? They were given the police force, right? And during this time, the police force used to be the slave catchers, the slave patrol. But the 6-pointed star, the sheriff star, that was still the same star used for slave patrols as police officers. So the Irish knew what they were doing. They knew who they were targeting and knew the role they were going to play. Remember the movie The Departed, right? How the cops had that Irish tradition within them. That still goes on today. What's the show? Blue Bloods. Blue Bloods, right? They're all Irish because policing became a family business. So that was their role to help subjugate the foundational Black Americans, was to believe the police officers. And that's the contract that the Irish signed as a weapon against us. All right, last time we talked about the Irish, how they had a little solidarity with us when their hazing period, but once their hazing period is over and they gave them those billy clubs, they turned those billy clubs right in our head. All right, so now we go to the next group, which is the Chinese. Now, the Chinese, just like the Irish, and just like every other group, they had their hazing period. So they had the little hazing with the internment camps and everything and stuff, and they built the end of the railroad. We built the majority of it. They finished the last bit of it, but once that hazing period is over, what happened? They say, okay, now you guys are going to be in charge of the financial war against Black Americans. So what we're going to do is we're going to burn down their businesses. We're going to deny them loans for their businesses. We're going to give them all this red tape, but we're not going to do that to you. We're going to place your businesses in their communities, and you're going to get rich off of them. And the Chinese signed up for it. Remember the movie Sinners? They had shops on both sides, and they were there for a while, okay? That was in the 1930s. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. By 1920s, we had the Red Summer of 1919, how we were all getting attacked. All of our businesses, all of our entrepreneurship, all of our generational wealth was being taken out. It was being replaced by the Chinese, and they signed up for it. Don't think for a second that they were ignorant about this and we just want to work and stuff. And now I'll tell you why they know, okay? We have the whole sentiment of hurry up and buy, hurry up and buy. It's because they understand that with their contract with white supremacy, they believe that they're superior to us. That's how you have all these unalivings at these Chinese stores and stuff, and how they can treat us so badly, but then we're still giving them all this money. All right. And look what happened a few years ago with the college admissions. What was that all about, right? They were saying that we're not getting to colleges and it's Black folks' fault. That wasn't a true story. The real story was that they were signaling to white supremacy that, look, we understand that our role was the financial attack against Black Americans, and we're still with it. We still know our role, and we are signaling to you that we are still want this agreement. Because how best to attack someone financially than to limit their access to the highest levels of education? That's like the most straightforward way of generating generational wealth for anybody. And that was the Chinese role. Okay. And another reason why they could have so much discontent and so much animosity towards us while we're still giving them this money, because they have that same within themselves. One common theme that you'll see with a lot of these immigrant groups is that their civil rights, horrible civil rights record that they have within their own people, they bring here. Okay. Next time you go to a massage parlor, I don't. I drive past them, right? I drive past them a couple of times. And I did go to a nail salon with my family one time, got my feet done. It was great. But one thing I noticed, right? You go into this place, it's full of women, no cars outside. There may be one car outside. And there's always this guy that kind of comes out, just kind of stands around and looks around. He's not there for the janitor. He's to make sure that the workers don't decide to get a little bit of fresh air. So they're still engaging in slavery. So when they see us and how we rejected slavery hundreds of years ago, but they're still within their own society, that shows you how they view humanity even within themselves. So that's how we can spend generations giving them money and hurry up and buy, hurry up and buy. Because they don't have that self-love within themselves. Or otherwise they wouldn't be enslaving themselves. Think about that, okay? So that is part of the financial war that the Chinese have waged against us, willingly, I might add. And we're going to go to the next group next time. All right, next up, we're going to talk about the other half of the financial war that these select immigrant groups have waged against us. But first, we talked about the Irish, how they had the physical. Once they got those billy clubs that became cops, they turned right on us, right? Then we talked about the Chinese, Asian, but specifically the Chinese, how they housed those businesses and everything, how the businesses were allowed to operate within our communities, and they saw how we stuff was getting burned down, but they never spoke up for us. They never spoke up. All these Chinese, remember, sinners, they've been doing this for so long, but when our business was getting burned down, they never spoke up because that was their deal. Their deal was to be the financial supplanters. Now we go to the other financial supplanters, which is the Persians or the Arabs or the Middle Easterns. They have the same deal with the Chinese, right? Uh, Government was like, hey, we're going to give them all this red tape. We're going to burn their stuff down. We're going to give them all these denials and stuff. We're going to just make it just so hard for them to just open business within their own neighborhoods. But for you, easy street. You're just going to waltz right in there. You're going to open up shop. And here's something else that all immigrant groups get that you don't realize. They also get a pass to operate a complete underworld. They all get passes. The Irish got their passes. That's how a lot of police got gangs in them and stuff. The Chinese got their passes. That's where they allowed slave labor in these nail salons and these massage parlors. And the Arabs got their passes to run their underworld. And their underworld is real big on the scamming, right? That's what you have up in Minnesota and stuff. Those Somalians, they consider themselves Arabs. And I believe that they're Arabs too because they was giving the Arab treatment. You can open their businesses. You can do any kind of shady business dealing you want, and we will turn a blind eye to it. As long as you stick to your agreement of operating your business within the black community, because you're not going to go in ours. That's what they told them, right? You're going to get all this money off of black people and subgroups. But that was the deal that the Arabs signed. We're going to help financially subjugate these black Americans. We're going to turn a blind eye to how these business practices, and we're just going to thrive and prosper on their dollar by giving nothing back to them. And they look at us with contempt too, because look, just like with Chinese and stuff, these people have horrible civil rights records within their own country. They're still enslaving each other. So when it comes to our treatment with us, that's why they just kind of shrug their shoulders because it's like, man, because slavery is still going on with them, especially of the gender equality that they have. You want to talk about gender equality? Black men and women have nothing to the gender equality that the Arabs have. Just terrible, 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 terrible. Imagine us telling our women they can't drive. Like, get out of here. You know what I'm saying? But we always want to look within ourselves when we find the worst stuff. But no, Black Americans have the best humanitarian record on the planet. No hands down. No comparison. No comparison. But the Arab financial war against us is very similar to the Chinese. So if you know the Chinese one, you pretty much know the Arab one. They're like brothers and sisters, or brothers and brothers, whatever. Okay, now it's starting to get really, really good now. Now this immigrant group flew under the radar so much, but they're responsible for so much damage. It is criminal that is not talked about. I'm talking about the Italians. Now let's run down the list. Okay, we have the Irish, who became the police force, which were the old slave catchers, and we see how that relationship worked out, right? We have the Chinese and the Arabs, which was kind of similar. They had the financial one. All their businesses were allowed to operate in our communities while we was getting all these heat from the government, but they were allowed to thruster and prive upon us, but giving no respect, or very little respect for us, okay, for all this money that we've been giving them. But now we come to the Italians, and the Italians was so foundational in the trajectory we have as Black Americans that we have to talk about it, okay? Now, just like with all groups, they get their hazing period. The Italians got their hazing period, and that's the only thing they want to talk about. Oh, they were the black people of Europe and stuff. Yeah, everyone gets their hazing period. But then when the hazing period is done, you get their assignment against black Americans. And what were the Italian assignment against black Americans? They were the beginning of the chemical warfare against our people. They were the heroin dealers. Point blank. That was their job. They were the heroin dealers to the inner cities. Only thing the inner city is code word for black part of town. We know about the Great Migration and things like that. And how when we go to these cities, they were denying us jobs, they were red taping us. Oh, you have this zip code, we can't hire you, and all this stuff. So when people were down and stuff, they're looking for an escape. What happened? Well, they turned to drugs, and that's where the Italians came in. And just like every other immigrant group, once you sign this deal with white supremacy against black Americans, your underworld is allowed to thrive. And boy, did their underworld thrive. They can create entire generations. They made a whole ecosystem and called it the mob. They had structure, they had bosses, and all this was allowed to operate right under the nose of the FBI. Now imagine if the Bloods and the Crips had become so organized over generations that we were allowed to build entire cities with that money. That's what Las Vegas is, right? That's what Jersey City, like a Boardwalk Empire, that show. That's what that's all about. You ever watch the show Casino? It tells you right there. They were allowed to operate with such impunity that they were building cities off of my money. That's how much of a pass they was given because their job was to subjugate us chemically with heroin. And they did it. And they did it for a long time. Okay. So this is something that I want to bring to black Americans, that each immigrant group had the role against us. So when we say that, when our old elder teachers say we have no friends, we have no friends. It is more than that. We have enemy combatants that is working for white supremacy, and they've been doing it for generations. And it didn't stop until the 1980s. And finally, in the 1980s, like the late 70s, all of a sudden the federal government decided to get it back on us. You know what? We're going to start prosecuting these mobsters. That's been running these whole cities for generations. All of a sudden, why did they change their mind? Because in the 1980s, the chemical of choice of weapon against Black Americans shifted from heroin to crack cocaine. And you know who was bringing in the crack cocaine? The cartels. Now they don't have much of a use for the Italians anymore. All of a sudden, these prosecutors start coming. Big coincidence, right? And another thing I think why they switched from heroin to crack cocaine, because we were utilizing heroin too much. Like all of our jazz and stuff and everything, we was able to channel it into creativity. I don't think they like that. They say heroin's not tough enough. And those needles, man, I don't know how you could just stick yourself like that. Anyway, beyond my time. But that's what happened with the Italians, and that was the Italians' role. So when everyone talk about, oh, Black and Italians like the blacks of Europe, no, they're not. Once their brief hazing period is over, they were charged with the chemical warfare against us, the first wave, and it was detrimental. Detrimental, especially for the older generation. Someone like me, you know, I'm in my early 40s. I wasn't really around like during the heroin and stuff. But you talk to your parents about how detrimental heroin was, and their parents and their parents. That was the Italians. That was their role against us. So don't let anyone tell you that there was any kind of solidarity between blacks and Italians. They were the weapon used against us right before this next wave, which I'm going to talk about in the next video. All right. So we're going to break down the immigrants used as weapons against us. We're going to go down the list. Okay, first we had the Irish, which were given the police force, which is the old slave catchers. We know that relationship. We have the financial weapon against us that the Chinese and the Arabs took the mantle of. We know they're all businesses all up and down in our neighborhoods and stuff, but they still disrespect us. Okay, and then we came to the first wave of chemical warfare, which the Italians were responsible for. That was the heroin. That was their job, to funnel heroin into our communities, and they took that job and they relished in that job, and they have not apologized for it nor look back. Now we go to the second chemical wave, which was crack cocaine. Now in the 80s, all of a sudden, the federal government decided to start prosecuting these Italian mobsters because the chemicals switched from heroin to crack cocaine. And for my generation and the ones below us, we know what happened with crack, right? We know how that went down. But it was the cartels who were bringing it in. And just like every other group, once you sign this contract in order to help subjugate the Black community, your underworld is allowed to operate for free. And best believe that that money that the cartels made, don't think for a second that didn't trickle down to all of their communities. Okay, that much money in such a short time, they all were benefiting from it. You didn't have to be a supplier in order to get the benefit from it. Okay, so this is something that they accepted as a people, and it continued until the U.S. government decided to stop it. But I remember the war on drugs. Okay, I remember Dare. I had like a little Dare T-shirt. I remember the news and stuff, and everybody you would see on it. You know who you would see on the news? You would see kids look like me getting roughed up on corners. You would see single floor 2 and 3 bedroom houses getting kicked in with all this military grade gear. But you know you didn't see? You didn't see any mansions getting kicked in, right? You didn't see any like big huge warehouses getting robbed. Maybe like once or twice, like every decade or so, just to put a show for it. You didn't see like big takedowns that would really put a dent into the supply network because they were covered. But all the heat came from the very bottom end, from the poor, from us, and that was a contract that the cartels signed, and by extension, the Hispanics, Mexican Hispanics to be precise. Okay, and so when you have all of these factors being in and everything, then you understand the role that all these immigrants groups had. And that was the Mexicans' role, was to ensure that crack cocaine came into our communities. And they also had a financial role, because you see a lot of their business was open up too. So they had the financial with the Asians and the Arabs, and then they also had to have chemical with the Italian stuff. They were burning the candle on both ends. Okay. And at the same time, too, they having any kind of remorse for the things they did to our community? No, they knew what they were doing. But just like I said, all of these immigrant groups, a lot of them have one thing in common. They have horrible civil rights records among themselves. You hear about what the cartel does in Mexico, right? Leaving bodies on the side of the roads, taking out government officials. When have the Bloods and Crips ever taken out government officials and left bodies laying in the street as a message? We didn't do those kind of things. So when they have that civil rights record among themselves over there, and then they come over here, seeing the detriment of crack, it didn't faze them at all. And it wasn't until they switched from crack to fentanyl, and then it started affecting the untouchable groups. Then all of a sudden, now the federal government like, okay, cartels are bad. We really need to crack down on them, right? It's the same thing with the Italians. Once you show that either your use has come to an end, or you break off from the script, which what the cartels did, now they're a problem because they broke off from the script. And now they're talking about, oh, you need to help us. We help you doing we what's the big thing they're saying now? Like slavery was abolished pretty early in Mexico. We helped you and stuff. Yeah, but the black president that abolished slavery, you took out. And then what was your reward for helping us with slavery, right? Bringing in crack cocaine later on and decimating our communities. Yeah, I say we're pretty even in Mexico. So don't try to play that against us. All right. For all that stuff you did, you claim with slavery, yeah, but we got receipts for what you did with crack cocaine, and that was your community that brought it in, and we still don't see no apology for it. What has the black community done to the Mexican community, right? What have we done to them? Nothing. But what have they come here and done to us? Their uncles and their brothers and their fathers that was helping with this, and sisters and mothers, because they're all in on it. They knew that it helped benefit them, but there was no remorse for it. So that was the Hispanic role in our attack, in the attack against us as far as immigration. They were part two of the chemical warfare against us. And don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that crack would not have been possible if not for the cooperation, not only of the cartels, but the Hispanics that surrounded them, the peripheral ones. It would not have been possible without them. Do not forget that. All right, so we talked about all the different immigrant groups and their role against us, right? We talked about the Irish role, who became the police officers. We know how that relationship worked out. We talked about the Chinese and the Arab role, how financially, how they was used against us and how that worked out. And then we talked about the Italians and how they were the bringer-ins of heroin, and the Hispanics, namely the cartels, but their subsidiaries, whatever, and how they were responsible for crack cocaine and also the financial attack against us for their businesses. Now we come down to the big one, okay? Now we come down to the big current wave. And arguably, in my opinion, this wave is the most important to understand because it has the potential to be the most detrimental to us. If this wave had been successful, it would have done what none of the other waves could have done, and it would have wiped us out completely. I'm talking about the Caribbean and the African wave. Now, do you understand that? You understand that when they first started coming in, this was during the Civil Rights era because the federal government decided that black people, foundational black Americans, were ungovernable. And we were. We were bucking back. We were marching. We weren't taking it no more and stuff like that. We was letting them know that, hey, we're black and we're proud. They say, no, 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 we don't want that. So what we want the black face, which is fine for our needs, but we don't want that black mind. So what did they do? They start bringing in Caribbeans and Africans to say, we're going to use them to replace you. Okay. So whenever you hear Caribbeans and Africans talking about, oh, we're so educated and we have so many degrees, we're so many doctors and lawyers. Yeah, they're right. Because that's what happened. They were paid and they were given all these accolades, they were given these degrees, they were given these scholarships, they were given all these positions with the sole purpose of being black faces without the FBA mind. And this is what I mean when I say that their wave was the most detrimental to us because before they attacked us like financially and physically and chemically. But because we're people of accountability, we can work around that, right? So you have some people open some business stuff like, well, we just need to do better, okay? And that sustained us for a long time. We just need to do better, right? When we had the chemical warfare from the Italians and the Mexicans, we're like, look, we just got to stop doing drugs. We got to tell people to get off this stuff. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to the Irish and the police force, you can only do so much, but at a certain time, you stay away from a lot of crime. You won't get involved with them, but we still can't help it when like the police stops and things like that. But we're still ways that we could adjust around it. But when it comes to this one, with the Caribbeans and Africans saying that you are not you, I'm you, oh, that's directly personal in a way that you can't be any more personal. That's attack against your ancestors. That's attack against your culture. That's attack against your spirit. That's attack against the very God that black people serve under. No one knows God like black folks, black American folks. No one knows him like us. And that's why the heat coming against the Africans and Caribbeans is so much more potent than the other groups because their role, if it had been successful, would have wiped us out completely. Wiped us out completely. And that's why they all have the same talking points, right? You're not you. You're us. You didn't make hip hop. It came from the islands, right? You didn't have soul. Soul came from Africa somewhere. Even soul food came from Africa. The ingredients aren't over there, but the essence of it came from the essence. Let's get it. The essence of it came from Africa, and that's what their role. And that's why they're so concise with their messaging, of course, against us. Okay, and that's very important to know. And just like with all other immigrant groups, once they sign this contract, their underworld is allowed to thrive. You know the thing I point out about the massage parlors, the Asian massage parlors, and the nail salons, how it's full of women, but there's no cars outside because they can't leave. It's the same things for these African braiding shops, right? Full of women, no cars outside, or maybe one car and stuff. They're not able to free and roam and stuff. They're not employees. This is their role in America. You understand? And they're also big on scammers, just like the Arabs are. Huge scammers. Okay, and you see it all over the time. All the scamming that you do, but when we scam, we get caught, we get prosecuted. There's a woman right now in Chicago who is going to court for using her food stamps to make videos of baked goods that she ate herself, but they're still taking to court. Meanwhile, you have entire communities in Minnesota and Ohio and down in Florida who's scamming to the tune of millions and are just now kind of being held accountable to it. Millions by one single solitary black woman was dragged through court. You see how the underworld is allowed to operate? And so this is the thing with the Africans and Caribbeans, right? Because this was the final straw. This was a spiritual attack against us. And this is why, as foundational Black Americans, we're finally waking up and we're saying, you know what? Enough is enough. We have this ice going everywhere and everything like that. You guys handle your own problems. They're just now did the march on. Did you guys see the march on Selma? Before it was about them, but now it's about us. They are blatantly trying to take us out of our own story. Blatantly. So you see the script that they started from way back in the Irish up now to the Africans, Caribbeans, they're still on the same script. Like all of our like all of our teachers that says, we have no friends. So even in the midst of them being drugged all over the place and taken back home, which you're going back home, how bad is it? They're still disrespecting us as a collective. As a collective, they're still disrespecting us because they all signed that deal with white supremacy in order to help subjugate us and to assist in white supremacy's attempt to eradicate us. But it's not going to work. What they say, if you take a shot at the king, you better not miss. And they missed. More importantly, the Africans and Caribbeans missed. I think they saved the best for last because, like I said before, if they had been successful, we'd have been decimated as a group, decimated as a nation. But we're not, and we're here. And so now you guys have your own fight, but we're going to continue to regulate and to say what's what and tell the truth about the history and the truth of all these immigrant nations and their role against us. We have no friends. Let them deal with their issue because here's the thing at the end of the day. Here's at the end of the day, right? They always want to say that we have the same oppressor. The white man did us to it. The European did us to us. We're all the same. We're all the same. No. We are oppressed. You have bad business dealings. Your business deal is going south. That's your problem, right? We are fighting occupation. We are fighting oppression. We are fighting systematic erasure against ourselves. You don't know how to pick your business partners. That is not the same thing. Not the same thing. All right. Now, this is something that I've been wanting to talk to for a while and is really upsetting me because I keep hearing it over and over. It's when people, especially immigrants, try to use the Black American gangs as somehow derogatory against us. Well, you have the gang on gang violence and y'all kill each other and this and this and that. I can't stand that because all it is gaslighting, extreme gaslighting. Because at the end of the day, no criminal organization on this planet is more humane than the foundational Black American gang. Hands down. No one is. Okay? Because these other gangs, the things they do to their people, Black American gangs would never do. Never. Black American gangs, foundational Black American gangs, have never kidnapped entire classes of schoolgirls and violated them like the Boko Haram do in Africa, right? We just heard about the Ozoro Festival with them going around violating women, dragging them from the street, dragging them through the streets. What is that? What culture is that? That's not foundational Black American culture, okay? Foundational Black American gangs had never forced children to work in sweatshops and these textile factories for pennies or even nothing, getting their limbs endangered, their lives endangered, just to make clothes and purses and shoes like these Asian gangs do. Okay? Foundational Black American gangs had never mutilated bodies and left them in the desert, in the street, as a message to political leaders to leave us alone, or just to terrorize to establish their authority to the populace, like these cartels do in Mexico, right? Black American gangs don't have a culture of kidnapping their own people just for money. We're going to kidnap you just for money. And if your people don't pay, we're just going to lop you off, drop your body off somewhere, like the cartels do in Mexico. Okay? Black American gangs have never taken advantage of political and social and economic upheaval to roam the streets, creating a war like atmosphere so intense that your nation has to bring in another army just to deal with you, where your people are fleeing your country in droves because your warfare is so out of control, so wild that it becomes uninhabitable, like the Haitians do. Okay? Foundational Black American gangs had never become so enmeshed in their own politics and their own ego that they targeted the one civil rights leader, the one icon that they had, so much that when he died, when he was dying, he wouldn't even go back to the island of his birth because he was afraid of being shot again by the gangs of those people that he loved, like Jamaica did with Bob Marley. Bob Marley died in the frozen mountains of Germany, and I've been there. I spent a lot of my childhood in Germany, so I know the frozen mountains of Germany because he wouldn't go back home to his island because of the gang warfare there. You had the one leader drove him out, and Marcus Garvey because he couldn't get nothing cracking anyway. But that's another story. Okay, so when people talk about gangs, gang warfare, and foundational Black Americans, no, there's no comparison. We are the only gang in America. I'm not a gang member myself, but they're still my people, so I claim them. We have the best humanitarian record on this planet, bar none. Foundational Black Americans have never, again, violated children and then consumed them with satanic rituals like the European elite do here in America. Foundational Black American gangs never burned crosses in people's yards, burned down their houses, burned down their churches, hung them from ropes from trees, and then had a picnic with their family on a Sunday with their children laughing and taking photos like the Klan here did here in America, right? Foundational Black American gangs have never firebombed entire families that drive them out the neighborhood because they just wanted to live there, like the Hispanic gangs did to the foundational Black Americans in California. You know, so much for your Black and brown unity. That's what these other gangs are doing, okay? And you know what it is? Because of all these gangs that I mentioned, foundational Black American gangs are the only one that understand innocence and respect innocence. Whenever you hear of like a drive-by that involves Black American gangs or something, and a child gets hurt, you know what happens after that? It doesn't get repeated. They go silent. You know why? Because internally, they don't allow that. The police officer didn't come by and say, hey, you guys took a kid. You guys need to chill out. You need to chill. No, they handle it internally because Black American gangs understand innocence. So yeah, I'm proud of the Bloods and Crips because even though through all of, because you remember the Bloods and Crips started out as community activist organizations. Okay, they were offshoots of the Black Panther Party. They were for good. And because they were good, they were targeted, they were twisted. And then with the economic situation, everybody knows that when you take away opportunity from a nation, opportunity from an area, then that's when criminality begins to bloom and fester. Even through all that, they still kept their humanity. So I'm proud of the Bloods and Crips. I'm proud that the Bloods and Crips are from the foundational Black American lineage because I know with the Bloods and Crips, I'm not going to have to worry about my nieces being kidnapped and violated in mass. I'm not have to worry about finding out that because my uncle wanted to run for political office, he got his head lopped off and he's lying in the street as a message. I know that for a foundational Black American gang, I'm not having to worry about them roaming the streets, shooting up everything just because they can, because there's a political vacuum within the nation. I know that as a foundational Black American that my gangs don't do those things. I don't have to worry about my nieces and nephews having to work in sweatshops for pennies for an entire another nation just to make them some extra money. I know Black American gangs aren't going to do that. So I'm proud of the Bloods and Crips. And, you know, GD Vice Lords, everybody. Because like I said, they understand innocence. And that is something you do not get around the rest of the world. So whenever someone tries to use Black American gangs against you, the Black on Black violence and this and that, you hold your head and say, yeah, that's right. And that's all they do. And that's all they do. Our children are safe with foundational Black American gangs. Our families are safe in their homes with foundational Black American gangs. Gang activities over here is within each other for the most part. And it's really calmed down for the most part. I mean, when I look in the news, it's all Hispanics, it's all immigrant gangs and things like that. It's not even cracking like that anymore. Because it was never a lifestyle of pleasure like you see what they're doing over there in Africa and in South America. It was necessity, it was a response to the oppression of the environment. So don't let anyone else talk about our foundational Black American brothers and what they had to go through. They're still humane. And a lot of other nations can't say that. All right, so this is something that'll help you understand the immigrant class when they're always talking about slavery in concerns to foundational Black Americans. Like you just had that, the Joy Reid and the Godfrey and them podcast when they're talking about slavery and how they feel that we feel about it and things like that. Then you got the jokes how we came on planes and they came on trains and like the slurs, like, you know, the Arabs was like, you're a slave, you're a slave, you're a slave. The reason that they have so much of a say about slavery and so much an opinion about slavery is that slavery, unlike with foundational Black Americans, is still tolerated and practiced within their society and within their nation. We are the only ones who have abolished slavery completely from the moment that was imposed upon us until the Civil War. And then after that, Reconstruction, and then sharecropping. Every form of slavery we've rebelled against, we've abolished, but they have not. So that's why you have that obsession with slavery, with the Joy Reids and the Godfreys and stuff, right? Because here's what could happen to you as an African. As an African, you can go somewhere to work, like with the Arabs when they was building Dubai, and they can take your passport and they can force you to work for free, and they won't give it back until they say that you're finished. But you know what you don't hear? You don't hear the African government really making a big, strong pushback, like, give our people back. What are you doing to them? You don't have that. Why? Because within African society, they still enslave each other. Like with Boko Haram, oftentimes they get children and enslave them to force them to be gang members, right? Oftentimes women are in slave positions throughout all Africa. Same thing with Asia, with those sweatshops and stuff. Those kids, they're forced to work there. Oftentimes, women, especially women, are forced to work in these situations because slavery is still tolerated within their society. Okay, when you have the migrant workers, like the Hispanic and the Mexican migrant workers that come and work on these farms, and they get their passports taken away. That's one thing they always do. They always want to take their passports, and they have them working these fields for like all day and stuff. They don't even get like any days off and all that because they're like their lives aren't like necessarily in danger at the moment. They're like, oh, this is great. This is way better than the slavery back in Mexico because they still dealing with sharecropping down in Mexico, growing those plants like the coquina and the cannabis and stuff. They're dealing with sharecropping situations there still in 2026. So when they come here and they become enslaved, that's why Jasmine Crockett, because you know how Jasmine Crockett was doing all this stuff for immigrants. She was saying immigrant, immigrant, immigrant. And then she made that slavery thing. She talking about black folks like, we ain't going back to those fields. And the Mexicans took offense to that. They took offense to that because slavery is still a part of their society and it's still tolerated within their society. And that hit a nerve. They didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that they're still being enslaved and they're still tolerating that. The Mexican president, you don't hear the Mexican president talking to America and said, how can you have people enslaved on your farms in your country? And no, you need to let our people go. They're not getting that from Mexico. Why? Because slavery is still tolerated within their society. And that's the difference between a lot of these immigrants and foundational Black Americans. We don't tolerate slavery in our society. I said it in other videos about when you have those nail salons, the Asian nail salons and the Asian massage parlors and the African braiding shops, how the places be full of women, but there are no cars outside because they're not free to go. They still engage in slavery within themselves. So whenever you hear an African talk about slavery as a derogative, know that it comes from a place of insecurity because at any time, like with Joy Reid and Godfrey, their parents born in Africa could have been slaves at any time. And that's the fear they carry. So that's why you are descendants of slaves, because like they're escaping slavery right now. And it's not the slavery that's imposed upon them by Europeans. It's slavery within their own people. And that is a huge insecurity that they carry. That's why they're so fascinated with us slavery. And they want us to feel so bad about overcoming slavery because they have yet to overcome slavery. None of them have. And so when you hear that, just know that don't get upset because we're not upset about slavery because we abolished it. Slavery is no longer part of the foundation of Black American psyche, society, or culture. But they can't say the same. So that's why they're so obsessed with our position with slavery and why they want us to constantly feel bad about it. And that's why you have individuals like Joy Reid and Godfrey constantly want to narrate our relationship with it as if they're experts on slavery, because technically they are.
And I want y'all to hype this video up for this exact reason, because we have plenty of FBA'S, Black Americans, who don't understand this situation that we have with these immigrants. And this is why we hate them. This is why we have a situation, not really hate, but this is why we dislike them. And because we start to see the patterns of what they've done to us over time, how they've been used as a tool of white supremacy. And I know a lot of people look at it like, oh, these immigrants are Black when they're talking about Afro Latinos and Africans and Caribbeans who come over here, and they're like, they're Black. How are you going to get mad at Black people? You doing the same thing the oppressor is doing. No, the oppressor just wants you out the country because they want control. They don't want you here. They're racist. That's why they want you out the country. We want you out the country because you're helping the oppressor keep us down. It's a big difference. So it's not doing the same thing that the oppressor is doing. It is doing the same thing the oppressor is doing for different reasons. We're not doing it in a racist way where we hate you because you're just racist. We're just racist and we don't like any other people. No, we're doing it because we've tried and tried and tried to have solidarity with every group in this country. And as his brothers explained, it always falls through. And I can explain more and more and more. I can add on to this. I'll make my own video about it because I love these type of perspectives because they get my mind going. And I hope they get your mind going too, because these are the conversations that we need to be having. That's why please go in the comments and let me know what you think about this. Anything you want to add to it, shit, help me put together in the comments. I'll take some of your comments from this video when I make my video and I'll put them in there. You know what I mean? And I'll talk about those comments and the things that he missed in here and things that you want to add in my next video. But it's been your boy Hendo. We out.